Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. The Tough Girl podcast is sponsorship and ad-free, and that's thanks to the monthly financial support of patrons. To find out more about supporting the Tough Girl podcast, please visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast, and help me to increase the amount of female role models in the media. All patrons will get their name on a dedicated patrons page on the Tough Girl website. All female patrons $5 and above are invited to join the closed Facebook group, the Tough Girl Tribe. Today I'm delighted we're going to be speaking with Mya-Rose Craig, who is a prominent naturalist who will be sharing more about her passion for birds and conservation.
I'm Mya-Rose. I just turned 18, but I'm probably better known under the name of Bird Girl. And I do a lot of blogging and tweeting and just campaigning to do with various environmental issues. And yeah, I've been really lucky because I've got quite a big platform online now. And I talk about all the different stuff that I feel is really important, whether it's global climate justice or diversity in the nature sector.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we're going to be talking about all of those different things. But I'd love to know, how did you get your nickname, Bird Girl? Where did that come from?
I came up with it when I was 7, and it was literally just because I needed an email address and I thought it sounded a bit like a superhero, which I thought was really cool. And I thought it was really, really fun sounding. And then years later, when I set up my blog, I put my email address in. One of the suggested names was just Bird Girl for the blog. And I was like, actually, that's really cool. And it has stuck ever since. Yeah.
Oh, no, I love it. I think it's amazing because you do have a passion for birding. And I'd love to know more about, where did that passion come from?
Both my parents and my older sister are really into bird watching and the environment and twitching and all that type of thing. So they've been taking me out literally since I was a baby, into the outdoors, and I grew up birding, and it's always been something that's been a really important part of my life. And I still love it all these years later, and I can't really imagine myself not birding for any reason in the future. So I think it's going to carry on forever, really.
So there was a term there that you mentioned which I'm not familiar with, which is twitcher. What does that mean?
So twitching is basically when you get news that a really rare bird has turned up somewhere, like one that you maybe have never seen before in the UK. And quite often they've flown in because of big storms, and they didn't really even mean to turn up there. And you sort of race across the country to try and track this bird down and see it, because it's going to be your only opportunity to ever have seen it in this country. So it can be nationwide, or we do twitching down at the local lake to try and see stuff that we've never seen at that particular lake before. And for me, it just adds a lot of adrenaline and excitement to the whole bird watching thing, really.
Oh my God, absolutely. It's I love it.
Yeah, it's like a little bird treasure hunt. I think it's great.
With bird watching, how does it actually work? Is there, I'm literally this is going to show my ignorance. Is there a list that you go through and you tick off? Do you have to take a photo to say that you've seen it? And do you need to gather proof? Talk us more about the logistics of being a bird watcher.
Well, that's one of the reasons that birding's so great, really, because it's just very, very flexible in how you want to do it. For some people, you don't even need to have binoculars or any special equipment or anything like that. You can just go out and watch birds and you are bird watching. And I think, some people like to do it very competitively, and they write down any new bird species they see and they keep a big list, while some people it's just a lot more it's something casual and something quite gentle to do in the outdoors. And I think there's a big range within the community, which is really cool.
What type of bird watcher are you? Would you say that you're competitive? Are you not competitive? Are you more chilled?
I think especially when I was younger, I was a very competitive birder. Me and my mum both are, actually. We both get a lot of satisfaction from ticking things off the list and seeing new things, and I don't know, seeing really rare stuff that loads of other people haven't. And I think it was sort of that competitiveness of it all that really hooked me when I was a kid. But I definitely think as I get older, just the more chill gentle side of it all is like it's really starting to appeal, and I'm starting to really enjoy just spending time outdoors. And it's I don't know, it's really lovely, you know.
Because there's some big numbers on your website. So you became the youngest person to see, is it over 5,000 birds basically? I don't know if you know the exact number, which is like apparently like half the world's birds. You've seen them all?
Yeah, that was so exciting when that happened. It was a slightly weird one in that we knew it was going to happen for quite a long time before it did. So it was like just waiting and waiting until we got up to that number. But it was amazing.
Where are some of the places that you've been with your family to go bird watching, or some of your favourite places to go?
Well, I'm really lucky because my family's been like I said, my family's been taking me out since I was a kid, but my family's also quite into like world birding, which is basically traveling and bird watching at the same time. So I've been traveling a lot more than your average kid would have done, and I've actually been to like all 7 continents and stuff, which is just feel very lucky for it all. It's really amazing. And so I've traveled all over the world and stuff, but we also do a lot of birding in the UK. And I think one of my favourite places will always be the Isles of Scilly down in Cornwall, just because it's somewhere I spent like so much of my childhood like running all over the islands to try and see whatever new bird had popped up. And it was just, I know it's somewhere that'll always be really special to me, you know?
Yeah. And I don't even know if this is possible to answer this question, but do you have a favourite bird, or does it sort of ebb and flow?
I do actually, yeah. Or I have a few. I haven't quite managed to narrow it down to one. But in the world, my favourite birds that I've seen have either got to be the southern cassowary, which is this like massive 6-foot tall bird that you get in Australia that like I think it looks like a dinosaur, and it's got these like massive talons that could slice you up, and it's just a really fantastic bird. Very exciting to see when it's about 2 foot taller than you. And my other favourite bird is probably the Harpy Eagle, which I saw last summer. And it's something I'd been trying to see for about 10 years at that point. And it's the biggest eagle in the world. It's like massive. And it's also absolutely gorgeous. And I was, so excited when I managed to catch up with it.
Where did you see that bird, the eagle?
That was in Brazil, actually. You get it a lot in like places in the Amazon in South America. But a lot of the time it's quite hard because they don't really spend a lot of their time like really out in the open, and they're quite rare these days as well.
I'd love to know, are there female role models in birding of who you look up to?
To be honest, especially in the UK, there are not that well. I mean, it's changing quite a lot, but especially when I was younger, there weren't many female birders like at all. Although, like, you know, this new generation of people has a lot of female birders in it, which is really nice. But I guess, like, in general, someone who I think is really amazing is this really famous world birder called Phoebe Schnetzinger, who she saw like a ridiculous amount of birds, and she started really late. Like, I think she started after she retired, and she just spent all her time traveling around the world seeing as many birds as possible. And she was she was a really cool lady.
Oh, she sounds awesome. Do you have a dream to continue on doing birding as sort of a career, or go on to do further study with it? What's the goal?
Well, this always surprises people a bit, but I'm not actually very like scientific minded, in that like biology was never my best subject or anything. And I think for me, I like birding in a very non-scientific way, if that makes sense. Like, it's very just like relaxing and spending time outside and just looking at things. So I actually want to go study politics and international relations at uni, which, completely unrelated. But I think definitely I'm going to carry on bird watching and going out into nature as I get older. And if I could find a job that in some way let me continue to spend time in the outdoors, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think actually going into politics and international relations will be fascinating, because you're an activist, you're an environmentalist, you do a huge amount in the birding space, as well as being campaigning for race, being a prominent UK race campaigner. And I'd love to hear more about your passion for the environment and conservation and what you've been doing in that space.
Yeah, so I've been doing campaigning in terms of diversity in, the countryside and the nature sectors for about 5 years now. So I started when I was 13. And I think the reason I got into it all was obviously, like, I'm half Bangladeshi. And growing up, I pretty much never saw anyone that looked like me except my mum and my sister going out into the countryside. And I thought that was a real shame. And I couldn't really understand why. So I set up this organization called Black to Nature that's all about trying to create this change. And half the work we do is running this grassroots project out in Somerset that's all about giving ethnic minority kids from inner city Bristol the opportunity to come out into the countryside for a weekend and really like experience and engage with nature for the first time. And I love doing their camps. They're always really special, and we do them with teenagers and primary age kids, and it's always really sweet. But the other side of the work we do is it's campaigning basically, and working with all these different organizations to try and encourage them to carry on trying to change things, or even make them acknowledge the issue in the first place, which is what we were doing for a really long time. And we've run a few conferences now called Race Equality in Nature. And yeah, I don't know, it's been really hard work actually. It's a bit of an issue that people didn't want to really talk about or acknowledge. But I think things are slowly starting to change, which is really nice, really gratifying.
I love the organisation that you created when you were 14, Black to Nature. Tell us more about the nature camps, because that must have just been amazing to give more children the opportunity to see wildlife and spend time in nature.
The nature camps were a weird one because we set it up. We started doing the camps before we set up the organisation, and originally I just wanted to spend like a weekend down on the Somerset levels, spending time with other kids that were also really into nature. But once I started like thinking about the whole race issue and the lack of diversity, I did a bit of a 180, and I was trying to get ethnic minority kids to come on this camp, even though it was like really last minute. We managed it. We got some kids in the end, and it was really like, well, when they first turned up, not gonna lie, they did not want to be there. Like, I think their mums had all made them come, and it was like a nice weekend sending them away somewhere else. And it was really like, oh my God, what have we done? They're going to have a terrible time, and therefore we're going to have a terrible time. But, we were working hard, just chatting and interacting with these kids and taking them out. And, by the end of the weekend, every single one of them had engaged with nature in some shape or form. And it was so special that these kids that hadn't even wanted to be there at the start of the weekend had loosened up and really, really enjoyed themselves. And so we do these camps every summer now. It's just one night with the primary school kids because it's all quite intense for them. They've never done anything like it before. And last year we ended up running 4 camps in the end, which was amazing. And I think for me, like, they're my favourite part of all the work I do, because it's not like, slogging my guts out trying to get organisations to, I don't know, start projects and campaigns and stuff. It's like genuinely just working with quite often kids my age, but also like these primary school children who are so cute most of the time, to try and, give them this new experience.
Do you feel a lot of responsibility as almost like your popularity and fame has grown in the bird world, but also, from your blog as well, which I know has had like over 4 million hits? And do you feel that pressure, and how do you deal with that pressure?
Sometimes, yeah, it's very weird in that when I started my blog, I didn't really expect anyone to read it. Like, it was mainly just for me. And it was quite immediate where these views were just pouring in and people were interested in what I wanted to say. And I was only 12 at the time, I think. And I don't know, I still find it very weird that so many people care about what I have to say. And I guess for me, I'm just trying to make the most of this platform that I've been given, because I feel like social media is absolutely a lottery where it's not necessarily about the person who does the most work or has the best message that manages to get all the followers. And I feel very lucky that things that I say are able to like go out into the world and be heard properly. It's very strange because it's been like that since I was about 14, but I try my best to be like do good things with it, I suppose.
How do you deal with the challenges in that space, around fighting racism, trying to create equality in the environment that you're in? How do you handle all of that?
I think because race was the issue that I decided I really wanted to champion and start a conversation about, because it wasn't being talked about at all before I came onto the scene, as far as I know. And it's quite a controversial issue, even within the sector that I'm trying to work in and the groups I'm trying to work in. And like I said before, I think it's quite uncomfortable. Like, a lot of people don't want to talk about it or acknowledge it. So it's been really hard work on that side of things. And I think also because of that, like online, I've attracted a lot of like nasty people, I suppose, who don't like what I'm talking about. So that's not fun. But I think like it's kind of sad, but it doesn't really bother me anymore because it's been years, and I just think most of them are quite like sad people. I don't know, it's of all the things that I could have picked to talk about, I think I gave myself a very hard and a very long-term job.
Oh, you did, but you're out there doing it, making this change happen. You're an ambassador for Bristol European Green Capital in 2015. Tell us more about your role in that area.
2015 was such an amazing year to be a Bristolian, because for people who don't know, it was picked as European Green Capital, which means that I think it's the EU or people in Europe have decided that Bristol is like an outstandingly green city within like the whole continent. For me, being involved in that was so special because it was just a year of continuous conversation about green issues and like, but also real action. Like, things were changing and things were really being done all the time. And I think because it was so exciting, so many more people than usual really got in on the action and were getting really involved in all these different projects. You know, there was just a really strong energy for change that year. I was really honoured to have been able to be part of that.
How have you managed to sort of maintain the momentum from 2015? How do you work? Do you have like a plan at the beginning of every year of what you're going to do, what you're going to focus on? Is it more ad hoc? Is it just waiting to see what happens? Like, do you plan or structure?
Not gonna lie, I'm someone who's not very good at planning, and I'm very good at procrastination. Like in school, I was always that kid like doing their homework during like break time. But I think so it's always been like very ad hoc, just going with the flow, seeing like what issues are being talked about and how I feel that I can contribute to the conversation. But as I get older, it's very sad, but I've had to start planning things a bit more just because the kind of work that I'm doing is a lot more structured. So, for example, the 4 camps that we were supposed to do this summer, which obviously have been cancelled because of Corona, we've been planning for months and months and months. And we have to think about like, you know, all the more boring side of things like finance and paperwork and sorting all the little details out. But in some ways, I do think it's been like a really important learning curve for me, just because it's a lot of responsibility, you know, and I'm learning loads and loads of stuff that I just never learned in school. And I do feel like because of all of this, I feel very independent and I feel very capable, which is really nice.
Absolutely. I'd love to know, what would be your advice and tips for people who want to get into becoming an environmentalist, taking more action to help develop change? What would be your advice and top tips?
I guess one thing would be that because we're living in this age of social media, everyone has a voice, and it's so much easier than it's ever been in the past to literally just stand up and start talking about the things that you care about. And it doesn't matter whether you have millions of followers on Instagram or not. Like, I think it's really important that people do just talk about the things they care about, even if it's just to like their 10 mates that follow them. And I think also it's so important that people read loads and that people really think about like the news that they're consuming, where it's coming from, why there might be a spin on it. Because I think now more than ever, it's really important that people have an understanding of all the different stuff that's going on in the world, because it can feel like a bit of a disaster at times, like everything's going wrong all the times and it's awful to ever have to read the news. But it's not. It's okay. It'll pass. And I think just even giving yourself the opportunity to express your own views and opinions can feel very freeing, especially as a young girl, because I do definitely feel like women, especially young women, are sort of constantly told that their views and their feelings and their opinions aren't quite as important and aren't quite as valued. So I think as a young woman, it's very important that you actively go and insert yourself into places, even if people aren't like going up to you and welcoming you and saying, come and talk to us, because people won't necessarily, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be talking about things.
How do you maintain your positivity and hope for the future?
I think definitely like it's a bit of side effect of social media that everything can feel a bit miserable all the time and like the world is about to end, but like constantly. And I think for me, it's been a massive learning curve understanding like what my boundaries are and when I have to stop and turn off and like separate myself from all the work that I'm doing. Because I guess it's just very important to value your mental health and to not burn yourself out, because at the end of the day, like the work that you're doing will be so much more valuable if you can do it long term and sustainably, which isn't going to happen if you're not looking after yourself and taking breaks.
Absolutely. And at least you can go and do your birding and get back out to nature. And one of the things I was reading on your blog as well is you've got your C license at 16. Now, I have no idea what that means in the world of birding, but are there licenses that you get or levels that you go up? Like, how does that work?
That's not quite birding. Like I said, birding is very freeform. Like it's whatever you want from it, it can give you. But that is in reference to ringing, or I think it's called banding in the US as well. But it's basically like this scientific process, the scientific study where you catch birds, wild birds, and you take different like measurements on them, like how much fat they have, how much muscle they have. I don't know how long their wings are, how much they weigh, and it's like a super long-term study in different bird populations and bird movement. And it's called ringing because you put a tiny little band on their leg and it's got a unique number on it. So it means that if someone else finds it somewhere else, they can look the number up and be like, oh wow, that was in England last summer and now we're finding it in Sweden or whatever. And from that we learn a lot about birds. But because you're handling wild animals, and you're like extracting them from nets and stuff like that and making sure that they're completely okay, you have to get a license. And yeah, so that's what having a C license means. It means I've got the basic license in terms of ringing, so I can go and do it by myself and the birds that I handle will be okay.
That's so awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I love doing it so much. It's so fun. Like I love just being able to hold wild animals in your hands. It's such an amazing experience.
Is the UK a good place for bird watching?
I think it definitely is. And I think even like native UK species and stuff are a lot more exciting than a lot of people think, because even though they might not be as flashy as maybe some exotic tropical birds, they're still very special and a lot of them are very interesting. And I think also there's a lot more diversity within bird species that people realise if you go looking. I love a lot of different UK birds, and one of my favourite, which always surprises people, is the wren, which you will find in most hedgelines ever, and it's like super common and super brown. But I just love them. I think they're great. So I love UK wildlife, but also because of where the UK is located, like right next to the ocean and stuff, we also get a lot of bird species being pushed over from America by like bad weather, which is why one of the reasons I think that twitching is quite popular here is because we get a lot of stuff being blown over.
You're also a charter champion for the Charter for Woods, Trees and People. What does that mean? What do you do there?
That's basically about advocating for trees and talking about how important trees are. And I've been involved in that in a very long time. And it's quite fun because when I started it, I felt like people weren't talking about trees that much, and they were a very overlooked part of the countryside. And I don't know, they're not wildlife because they're plants, but the whole ecosystem of everything. But I do definitely feel like the conversation around the need for trees and stuff has grown a lot, especially since I think it was last year that this article came out where it was talking about the exact number of trees we'd have to plant to combat climate change and what area of space that would fill. And, I just felt like it was very important because I think they're great and I think they can be very overlooked here in the UK. Obviously, people talk a lot about logging and deforestation in other countries, but that same concern for, our countryside isn't always applied in the same way.
What are the plans for you now? Are you taking a gap year? Are you going to be going to university in September? What's going to be happening?
Well, I'm really pleased because I am taking a gap year and none of my mates are. And obviously then Corona happened. And even though I'm not going to be able to travel to the places that I was hoping to, I'm just going to have a lot more time to work and sort out Black to Nature and spend time with my friends, to be honest. And then next autumn, I'm hopefully, if I get the grades, going to be going off to study politics and international relations somewhere, which I'm so excited for. I think it's so interesting.
No, that's going to be absolutely awesome. Where are you planning to go on the gap year?
Well, not gonna lie, it wasn't super elaborate plans, and I'm so glad because I have one other friend who is having a gap year and she's super organized. She's the opposite of me, and she'd organized all her different trips already. And obviously all of this has happened now and I haven't organized anything. But I was hoping to go to Europe this summer because even though it's weird, even though I've done a lot of traveling and stuff, I've never really spent any time in Europe except on a couple of school trips. But then I was hoping to take the train to China this autumn, which I don't think that's going to be happening either. So and apart from that, I didn't really have loads of plans.
Yeah, it's so sad. It's such an important part of your life, and I suppose also, would you have been going solo?
Yeah, probably, which I was actually really excited for. I've never traveled by myself, and even though I feel quite comfortable in traveling, going around by myself still felt really scary. But yeah, none of that's happening anymore. So yeah.
Let's talk about your campaigning journey that you've been on and how it's sort of evolved over the past 5 years and how maybe you've grown and developed as a person during that time.
At the start of this all, just when I was starting my blog and stuff, I was a lot more quiet. I'm not sure if my teachers would agree with me and stuff, but I feel like I wasn't very prepared to get in any arguments or debates in class or assert my views or just be very confident in any way, really. And I think it's a thing that a lot of young girls do, where you just sort of shrink and try to take up as little space as possible. And for me, it's been a massive journey in really learning to assert myself and be really confident in my views and who I am as a person. For me, that's been one of the most important things that's come out of all of this work that I've been doing. I think it's been amazing for me to have had the opportunity to have grown like that, really.
Yeah. I mean, how have you found the public speaking side of things? Having to stand up, talk, argue your point of view to get your views across and to be heard as well.
I actually really enjoy a good debate now. I'm slightly infamous in my classes because if anyone starts a debate, I have to win. And I think, like I said, I feel very confident in asserting my views, which I feel always felt slightly subversive to me when I was younger, because it was I'm not supposed to be talking all the time and saying what I think about these things. And I think nowadays I'm quite comfortable, to be honest, with public speaking, and I'm very comfortable talking about what I think about things. And I suppose it's massive life skills that I've managed to gain through all of this work I've been doing.
How do you deal with people who do have differing opinions to your own, and handle like the debates as such? Like, do you have a method? So for me on social media, I always try and promote what I love, not bash what I hate. But I do struggle with that a lot on trying to manage it, because I just really hate. I don't really like confrontation. I don't like having those sort of difficult, awkward conversations. I think part of me is just like, why can't we all just get along? But I know that that's not the right answer. How do you handle all of that?
I mean, to be honest, I feel quite comfortable talking to people about stuff. And even though, on social media, I'm not as nice as you. I do post stuff that I disagree with to make points about things and to start conversations. And sometimes I do use that as a starting point to talk to people about, what they believe and why I think they're wrong. But just talking to them about the thoughts behind things and what they believe and why I believe this. And I have changed people's minds in the past. And I think even though it's very easy to just get swept away in a conversation that's purely aggression, which I do sometimes, where it's just like arguing rather than trying to prove a point, I do think that sometimes there are like occasions where you can change someone's mind, and I don't want to let one of those slip by. So I do engage people online.
No, I love it. I think it's amazing. I love what you're doing and the passion that you're bringing to it. And I'd love to know, Mya-Rose, where's the best place for people let me say that again. Mya-Rose, I'd love to know, where's the best place that people can find more information out about you and follow you online and follow your journey?
The best place to follow me is probably just Twitter, which my username is BirdGirlUK. But if you want to read some longer stuff by me, you can also check out my blog, which is just called Bird Girl. And there's a lot of information about Black to Nature and all my campaigning stuff and a few articles that I've written.
Mya-Rose, just maybe share final words of wisdom, final words of advice to motivate and inspire other women and girls out there to follow their passions and to follow their interests. What would you say?
I think I'd just say that your opinions are valid and your voice is valid. And even if there are people that want to make you feel small or belittled, it's so important that people carry on starting conversations and carry on adding their voices to the mix. Because I feel like this world would be a lot blander and all these different debates would be a lot blander if all these amazing young women and girls online weren't adding their voices and their opinions to the mix.
Absolutely, totally agree. And Mya-Rose, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about your passions and your interests. It's been absolutely inspiring, and I know that you will be a force for good with all of the work that you are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been great.
Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Mya-Rose. What an absolute inspiration. Now, if you are interested in birds, I've got a fantastic Tough Girl podcast episode for you to listen to. Take a listen to Sasha Dench. She's also known as the human swan. So I spoke with Sasha on May 8th, 2018. So let me just tell you a little bit more about Sasha and what she's done. So Sasha is an Australian-born conservationist, adventurer and motivational speaker. She works for the Wildfowl and Wetland Trust in the UK. And one of the things that she noticed was that over the past 20 years, Berwick swan numbers have nearly halved, with there just being 20,000 remaining in the wild. But experts were unsure what's causing the population crash. So Sasha had this idea to investigate the problem. And after 18 months of planning, she decided to follow their entire 77,000 kilometre migration route from Arctic Russia to the UK. But how she did this was with a paramotor. So basically, essentially hanging from a paraglider with a propeller on her back. So during that podcast episode, episode, Sasha shares more about her life as being the human swan, her early years growing up, her passions for the environment and conservation, and shares more about this incredible journey from Arctic Russia to the UK. So I'd highly recommend you listen to that episode, and that is Sasha Dench. If you are brand new to the Tough Girl podcast, then please do go and visit toughgirlchallenges.com. We've got over 300 interviews with incredible women all around the world doing these amazing challenges, and they come on the podcast and share more about their journey, what they've learned. They give you top tips and advice to help motivate and inspire you with your own personal adventures and challenges. If you are enjoying the Tough Girl podcast and you've been motivated, inspired, I'd love for you to pay it forward. Tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast. That would be amazing. Or share it on social media, because like Mya-Rose says, you do have a voice, you do have influence. So shout about the Tough Girl podcast from the rooftops on your social media. That would be absolutely amazing. But wherever you are, whatever you're doing, have an awesome day. Give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, and don't forget to subscribe to the Tough Girl podcast. All right, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.